2 o'clock this Wednesday afternoon. Beautiful sunny day across Dumfries and Galloway. I am Lee Med. This is DGChamber, and it's time for another one of our webinars. We've been doing these for a couple of weeks now, and they've been really good, really informative. Everyone I've spoke to, all of our members, have said they've really enjoyed and really taken lots away from this. And today's topic is really timeful just now. Lots and lots going on. We're all spending time on our own. We're spending time away from people. We're living in this strange new world, and many of us are having to deal with things that we never have before, and it really can have an effect on our everyday well-being. So I'm delighted to say I am joined by a man that knows a thing or two about well-being. He is the Director of Wellbeing for our partners, Westfield Health, Richard Holmes. Richard, how are you, my friend?
I'm very well, but I'm getting a bit stressed now with the build-up.
Not at all, not at all. It's all good. It is all good.
Hello, everyone.
So, Richard, thank you for taking the time this afternoon.
Absolute pleasure.
As we say, it's a strange situation we're living in just now, a very strange existence. We're all trying to cope with things in different ways. Some of us are working shifts. Some of us are working from home. Some of us are still in offices. Strange new environments. What is the biggest challenge that we're facing just now in the terms of our own well-being?
Yeah, and this week is a really good week to be talking about it being Mental Health Awareness Week. But we shouldn't also lose sight that from a well-being perspective, our physical health and our physical resilience are really important to how well we're able to cope with pressures and stresses in life. So, but I'm sure we'll come on to that later. I think the biggest thing for all of us, and I'm sure everybody on the call will recognise this, is what do we do? How do we adapt to this so-called, it's a boring term now, isn't it? This new normal. Yeah. And whilst I know announcements are happening tomorrow up in Scotland, which might not speed things along as quickly as it appeared to be in England, we've also got the issue in England about starting to think about return to work and what does that mean for people's mental health and well-being, this type of thing. And those key challenges in terms of adapting to the situation now are going to be different for different people. You rightly picked up, those people on furlough could well be loss of purpose, because we know for an awful lot of people, work gives them that sort of purpose and direction and structure in life. Others, it's isolation. And we shouldn't forget key workers and home workers. One of the biggest challenges, particularly for home workers, is actually overwork. We used to do a lot of work coaching organisations, people to work from home before this situation, because there was quite a movement that way. And before COVID, there were about 4 million home workers. Now they reckon 16, 17 million. So there's an awful lot of people having to adapt to completely different ways of living as well as working. But I think for everyone, it's just the not knowing. Not knowing what's going to happen next week, the week after, next month. That's probably the biggest issue for us all.
It is uncertainty, and it is very, very unnerving. As you've said, some people cope with uncertainty better than others. Sometimes we'll just I don't want to say we get lost in our own thoughts, but it can almost be that vicious circle of not knowing, isn't it?
Yeah. And it's human nature is, and we're all built and wired this way, is we like consistency and predictability in our lives. So that's why uncertainty creates so much anxiety in people. And I've been doing a lot of these events and talking to HR professionals, business owners that are on the calls, and they're saying, above all, what their people want is just clear communication about what happens next and what they can expect moving forward. The problem is, as everybody on this call will have experienced, quite often we just don't know. And that creates stresses for us as business leaders in terms of, well, what do I tell people? How can I support and help them? And I think, most people just react really well and appreciate just some direct talk and some direct honesty. And actually just saying, look, we don't know. People appreciate that. I think if we, as leaders, if we follow that up in terms of but this is what we need to do for the next week. This is what we need to do for the next fortnight. So we can start to break down that uncertainty by getting people to think about what they need to do in short-term blocks. That's really, really helpful to supporting people from a mental health perspective in terms of helping them ease some anxieties and worries, the concerns they may have.
You mentioned the thing you keep hearing is communication, and it's the whole thing we know, isn't it? It's communication.
Oh, yeah.
Getting information out there. And I mean, I'm very lucky in terms of Dumfries and Galloway Chamber. We're a small team, we're a close team. There's 7 of us usually normally working in pretty close proximity, and we've got that shorthand with each other. We've got that knowing, you know what it's like when sometimes you can just lift your head up from the desk and you don't need to say anything. You can just tell by somebody's body language how they are. You say, look, do you want to go for a coffee? You can have that chat. So communication in our terms is all right. We can jump on a Zoom call like we're doing just now, the 7 of us, and keep up to date with what's going on, checking how everybody is. But sometimes I know some of our members have got much larger workforces. You're talking a couple of hundred people in some cases. How easy or how difficult, how annoying, I suppose, can it be to try and get that communication out to everyone so they understand it?
Yeah, I mean, that's you're absolutely right. The smaller businesses, and I used to be a small business owner at one point in time, and it was a hell of a lot easier actually communicating with people. You understood everybody a lot more clearly than you do in larger organizations. So I think the key things for me is, first of all, when we communicate, keep it as clear and unambiguous as possible. In larger organizations, if we're communicating on a theme, make sure those communications are all in the same place or go through the same route, so people know where to look to pick up those communications and they don't miss things because suddenly we've had this great idea, we'll use this medium, but we forget to tell people that we're using it. That happens all the time. And I think part of that whole communication process comes back to everybody on this call now who are in leadership positions of one form or another. It's critical that it's the leadership, sort of strong, firm leadership that drives the communication. But in these days, we need to be delivering that leadership in a, should we say, a compassionate or perhaps more compassionate manner than we did before. Certainly one that sort of empathizes a lot more with individuals. And I think one of the biggest challenges, regardless of whether you're leading a small team or a large team, is everybody's different. Everybody perceives things differently. Everybody has different needs. So it's being very attuned to what different individuals may want to hear. And that might differ in very simple terms in terms of your workforce now. So some of your workforce will be furloughed, some will be working from home, some will be key workers still in the workplace. And perhaps different messages and communications need to go to those different groups in terms of supporting them in managing these levels of uncertainty and the need to know that these people have.
You mentioned there we need to adapt that same message. We need to empathize with people. We need to show compassion with them. A lot of people, a lot of managers that previously I have worked with in the past in different organizations really seem to struggle with that. It's a case of they got told something by their manager, head office dictates this is what we've got to say. Is there, I don't want to say a top tip as such, but is there a little sneaky clip you could give us for how we as business leaders, as business managers, can actually make sure that we understand what empathy is, we understand how to empathize with our workforce, who, again, as you just said, are sometimes in completely different frames of mind from what we believe them to be?
There are specific things you can do and there's general things to do. I mean, when you're faced as an organization with a specific issue that you've got to try and communicate and develop, then it may be that you need to invest a little bit of time and training in terms of supporting those managers to deliver that message in the right way. Just one example, last week an organization came to us, housing association, and they've got to start putting their chippies, their plumbers, their electricians back into work, back into the houses to keep them under repair. So you can imagine the challenge that that might present to those individuals, and how do we communicate that out? So we've come in to do some coaching webinars with those managers in terms of how to best have challenging conversations about challenging situations people are facing. So that's a specific example of investing time if there is a critical issue for you as an organization. I think from a more general perspective, it's actually, as individual leaders, you can create, we've done this with teams before, part of your role is you can almost create a culture bubble for your team within the wider organizational culture. And you as the leader become the shield from the rest of the organization to your team. And that then allows you to communicate the message in your own style, in the way that your people feel receptive to, and the way that they'll react well to. Difficult thing to do, but it's a useful concept to try and think about.
That's interesting. Thanks for that, Richard. When we look at the communication that we're giving out to our teams, and once we've given that, it's all right saying this is where we are, this is what we're doing. How important is it that we go back and make sure they understand that message 2 or maybe even 3 days later, to say it's actually sunk in and check their understanding's okay, and then offer them that additional practical support if they need it?
Yeah, I think again it comes down to the team leaders in an organization. Part of anyone's role as a team leader is keeping that constant communication with individual members of the team. So it's really important, especially in these times, if you're providing guidance as to how you want things done that might be challenging, different from the norm. It's not good enough just to give the instruction and then expect everybody to adhere to it. Some people will grasp it straight away. Others will need more coaching and support to do that. And in order to do that, we've got to continue communicating with our people, leading our people. And I think it's also looking at your team, and actually you'll know those that once you've communicated, you can almost leave alone. And then there's others that you have to invest more time in. And that's part of the, if you like, the coaching role that's part of any leadership role.
So as we think about people's mental health, also lots and lots going on. It's great that we've got the communication there, we've got the practical support, and we've got the stuff that goes along with it. But again, somebody can almost seem all right on the outside. They can give those signals that everything's okay. But how do we actually check about people's mental health? At the Chamber, we started, before this all kicked off, to put in place a mental health awareness scheme, a mental health awareness plan. But obviously this is all come off and it's a little bit up in the air. What can we actually do to take steps simply and quickly to make sure that mental health is at the forefront of everything we do just now?
Well, it's interesting that you're saying there that you've left it in the air, when now's the time that you probably most need it. So one of the things to do is, yes, we've had a huge challenge as employers in terms of dealing with this situation in the early weeks. We're now, 6 to 8 weeks into it? Mm-hmm. So we should already have done or be in a more settled position where we can actually start to say, well, okay, how do we now proactively support our people in dealing with the issues they've got now? Whether that's practical support in terms of, I don't know, how to survive furlough, how to work effectively from home, those types of things, or whether it's more well-being support in terms of what do we need to bring in now to support our employees proactively with their own health and well-being. In relation to mental health, I would ask everybody on the call now, rhetorical questions, so don't panic. What's your mental health plan for the next 3 months? Okay. Now, just while you think about that, it's not as complicated as it seems. So all I'm asking you to think about is, what have you got in place for your staff at the moment? Is it being clearly communicated so they know that it's available? Have you contacted people to see whether they are using it, whether they do find it of interest, whether they're engaging with it? Not necessarily because they have to, because they've got a problem, but just to find what the general engagement levels are. So, is it fit for purpose at the moment? You may have had mental health schemes in place before, but now they're no longer fit for purpose. So, for example, you might have had mental health first aiders, but what are they doing now? They're not in the workplace. So, for example, one of the things that we've just brought in is a coaching course for qualified mental health first aiders in terms of how they can best adjust and deliver their role from a distance or remotely with the people. And I think the other aspect of the mental health plan that we can do quickly, simply, no cost at all, is what are your team leaders doing? And we're coming back to this team leadership piece again. So how regularly are team leaders communicating with their teams and their individual members? How are they discussing with team members how those team members are just feeling? And how do they understand what works for each individual? And what are we as an organisation doing in exactly the same way in terms of asking our team leaders, are you doing this? And if not necessarily why, but what support can we as an organisation provide you as a leader to fulfil that role more effectively and confidently?
And I think that's the thing, just the fact that we actually need to open up and have those conversations with our team and make sure that they understand things the way we think we're explaining them, having that chat. And like you say, it's the simple things about making sure that the communication is there, that everything's clear and everything's well thought out, and just making people aware of the steps that are there for them, which is really, really handy.
Just to add to that, there's an awful lot of support out there that you can signpost as an organisation your people to. We don't expect team leaders to be competent counsellors. That's not part of their role. They are coaches in terms of coaching people to perform better, and part of performing better is being able to cope better with the situation that you're in. But there comes a point where, as a team leader, you might need to signpost those people to more specialist support services, and there's a whole host of them out there, national organisations that provide free support for people. You'll know them, Mind, Samaritans, all those types of organisations.
We'll get some of that information. We'll pop all the links on our website, that of course at dgchamber.co.uk. And of course, throughout the course of this afternoon's webinar, if you have any questions, you have any comments for Richard or myself, you can just pop them in the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen there, and we'll take them from there, answer as many of them as we can throughout the course of the afternoon. Richard, we talk a lot about mental health and being in your head and the feelings that we have going on. How can we, I don't want to say control our feelings, but control maybe our anxieties, our unease for a lot of it, because that can sometimes be the worst thing that's going on. You think it's just me that's having this. I'm just going to keep it in there and how can we deal with the big one, anxiety, as you say, furloughed workers, and it's the not knowing that's causing the anxiety?
Okay, our levels of anxiety and worry are driven by how we as an individual perceive whether we can cope with a certain situation that we're concerned about. And quite often that links to our perception of how well we can't control that situation. Yeah. So what we find with people that we study, and believe me, we do this, we study people that are considered to be more resilient to anxiety, worries, stress, that type of thing. What they're really, really good at is actually accepting that there are certain things that we can't control and then reacting positively towards them. Now, it's a little bit of a myth, but it's quite often put about that more resilient people are really good at dealing with things that they perceive they can't control, because they just simply say, well, I can't control it, so why bother worrying? Yeah. Now, that's a little bit of a glib answer, but what they're really trying to say is that they've recognized and accept that there's something they can't control. So rather than waste negative energy getting worried and anxious about it, they look at it more positively in terms of, okay, what things can I do that might influence, not necessarily control the outcome, but I can influence the outcome a little bit better. And as soon as you start to think that way and think, actually, if I do that, things won't be as bad. The anxiety levels start to lift a little bit off your shoulders. And what they'll also look at is say, okay, let me assume that that is going to happen. So if that does happen, what do I need to do? How do I need to prepare myself to deal with the consequences of it happening? So they've got this sort of almost plan formulated in their mind that a lot of those types of people sort of have a natural preponderance to do that. The rest of us, myself included, have to actually learn and stop and think about it. So quite often the thing is, when something presents itself to you that's a significant pressure or challenge, is just to stop, take a step back, bit of calm, and just think about it. Right, okay, that's going to happen. I can't stop it from happening. What can I do now to lessen the impact? What can I do to deal with what's going to come out of it? And as soon as you start formulating that more positive thought process, you start going on a different route. Now, the times as they are today, there's a lot of things that I've started to adopt, which might be quite useful. So, for example, I've really started to manage my social media and media intake. Yeah, because all the stories out there, all the doom and gloom out there, and it starts to play on your mind. It creates uncertainty, it creates anxiety. So what I've done is I've rationed myself in terms of what I'll do in terms of looking at the news and listening to the media. If there's something that is a concern, I'll then proactively go and get the facts. So the best sites to go for there is the gov.uk or the NHS website to understand exactly what it is. And again, that can be a helpful way of controlling the situation.
I think we're all guilty of that. You know what I mean? We're working. We think I'm going to go make myself a cup of tea, come back, sit down, take 5 minutes just to catch my breath. And in that 5 minutes, what do? We jump on Facebook, we jump on Twitter, and the next thing you know, your head is pounding. You're more agitated than anything else than you were before. So I think taking that simple step, like you say, just to actually follow up the facts where we know we're going to get true facts is definitely something that's going to help us. But I'm going to hold my hand up and say, in terms of limiting my social media intake, that is going to be a job and a half in itself. I most definitely think.
I know it's almost now become habitual behaviour for us all, isn't it? We reach for the phone, we reach for everything just to check up on what's happening. I think one of the best things we can do at the moment is when you're having a quick break and a cup of tea, make it a break from everything. Just chill out for a few minutes.
But as you say, it's so difficult because for many of us, we are working from home, and I don't know why I do this, but I'm going to be very honest with you, Richard. I sometimes feel a little bit guilty taking a break away from my desk where I've been for the past 8 weeks. You know, I've got 3 different mobile phones here in front of me, all for the different things that we do at work. So I feel really bad when I go down the stairs, I make myself a cup of tea, I come back up and I see I've missed somebody's email or I've missed a phone call, and I think I should have been here for that. Is there an easy way to, I'm not going to say lessen that guilt, or is there an active, simple step I can take to try and get myself over that step?
I think so. I think one of the things that people are, if we refer here to people that are currently working from home, which is the situation that you've just presented, and what I said right at the beginning is a number of us overwork when we're working from home. It's happened historically. It's certainly happening now. Part of that might be because we want to send signals out to people that we are actually working, you know, so that might be emails that are constantly going out or going out at silly times that you normally wouldn't send them. But in the main, it's not down to that. It's the fact that we actually are not following a schedule through the day that's almost enforced on us when we're in the workplace. But when we're at home, suddenly all that structure's gone. So a really simple thing you can do is actually build a schedule to your day of when you're going to work, when you're going to have breaks. When you're working is, you know, one of the things I do is if I've got a significant project that's got to go out, I might write that out in my calendar, 2 hours project, and I switch the email off. And I just focus on doing that. And I take the view, well, look, guilty or not guilty, if somebody doesn't get a response to my email in the next 2 hours while I'm doing this work, hey, the world isn't going to finish. And if it's really, really important to them, they'll call me on the mobile. Yeah. So I think we can just think things through and not be selfish, but put yourself in the center in terms of how can I be the most productive during this working day? How can I deliver my best to my organization during this day? And that might be by doing things a little bit differently than we've done before, and just having the strength of your own convictions that that's the right thing to do. It comes again back to leadership. So if you feel in your organization people are adopting the Lee approach, should we call it?
Then, I like that. I'll take that, the Lee approach, yes.
Then part of our role as a leader is that welfare role. So it's actually giving people psychological permission. No, do things the way you think are done best. And so long as you still produce the results, we're comfortable with it. And if you can't produce the results because there's other things going on at home, tell us what those things are, because we can take those into an account. Yeah. So again, there's a leadership piece that comes back into this as well, Lee.
Okay, cheers, Richard. As I mentioned before, here at the Chamber, we're a close-knit team. We're good. We get a feeling off each other. We know how everybody is. And even in a strange time like this, we're staying positive. We're trying to be pretty positive. The morale's there. We know what we are doing every day is helping our members, is helping our businesses across Dumfries and Galloway. But again, we've seen that for many people that isn't true. COVID-19 it's a destroying thing. It's having an effect that I don't think any of us truly expected when it first came out. You work with lots and lots of businesses across not just Scotland, across the whole of the United Kingdom. What have you seen in terms of staff morale throughout this pandemic?
Well, this is an interesting one because, again, if we come back to what humans are, we're wired to be social animals. So we don't do isolation very well. Neither do we do restriction movements very well. Okay. So undoubtedly it's affecting us all, and for a lot of us, that can be quite a negative impact. The but that I just mentioned was, let's not also forget that there's a positive side to this. And actually an awful lot of people are using this situation really positively. For me, for example, I'm actually loving it. I'm loving the way that I'm working. I'm much more productive. I'm spending more time with my family. I don't have to commute an hour and a half to the office each morning and each evening. So I'm using half an hour of that hour and a half for extra time in bed. I'm using the other hour to take the dog a walk or go for a run. And actually, there's a number of members of my team that we've had to furlough. And I've said to them, look, just grasp the opportunity. You are never, ever again going to be paid a minimum of 80% to have a free sabbatical. So just enjoy yourself, make the most of it. I think we need to take that sort of more positive approach to certain things, rather than see everything is doom and gloom and that everybody is reacting negatively, because they're not. A lot of people are reacting sort of quite positively to this. Also on the positive side, we're seeing in all the organisations that I'm talking to in forums like this, or that we're actually working with to support, there's some fantastic community spirit starting to involve in organisations. We're finding people are a lot more empathetic to each other. The theme for mental health awareness this week is kindness. And I think an awful lot of us are actually being a lot kinder than we used to be to people. Also getting a lot more annoyed with people than we used to, and when they won't cross the street and we always have to. But generally speaking, there's a lot of that, and a lot of very inventive social initiatives that organisations are creating. Because the one thing that I still miss from work is the work piece is okay. I miss the social interaction. And I think that's the big thing. So keeping this social kind of cohesiveness, whether that's your weekly pub quiz, all sorts of bingo. We had the other day somebody talking about online bingo that they were doing. So lots of very inventive stuff that are bringing people together in ways that they've not been brought together before. So there's a lot of positives, and it'd be interesting, people on the call, if you've done things that have worked really well for you, put them on chat and share the ideas with each other.
You mentioned we're by very habit, we are social people, we are social animals. We want to get engaged and involved with our colleagues, with our friends. I've had a question actually come in on the email. It's lee.med@dgchamber.co.uk if you want to do the same. Sharon Clark, thank you very much. She says, Lee and Richard, how do you actually get buy-in from team members that don't want to get involved? I'm not going to put words in people's mouth, but there's always the moody loner, isn't there, in the office?
There is. And I think at these times, more than any, but should still apply in normal times, we have to respect individuals and what they want and what they don't want. Now, just because we've had a great idea for a social, that doesn't mean everybody else is going to think it's a great idea. And because some people haven't engaged with it, doesn't necessarily mean that your ways of engaging with those people aren't effective. It's just that some people are quite happy not being involved. And that's okay. And we should accept that that's okay. That doesn't mean to say we can't keep inviting them within the general circle. But don't expect everybody to want to do your fantastic idea. We have a Thursday night pub quiz. Okay. I never attend, and I put my hands up to it. I'm working at the moment sort of roughly 6 till 6. Last thing I want to do is be interacting with all my colleagues that I've been arguing with all day. Yeah, now, that's a bit of an exaggeration, but you know where I'm coming from. I'd actually rather, once I finish work, I'd rather just spend that time with my family and chilling out and relaxing. That's just the way I am. Others are completely different, but I think we have to respect individuals and not push people where they don't want to be pushed.
Okay, cheers, Richard. I'll tell you what, let's change tack a little bit. You said you've got all this extra time on your hands now. During that, you're taking the dog out for a walk. I suppose you're spending a little bit more time, dare I say, on exercise, because that's what it is. You're out, you're walking the dog, you're getting in your extra steps and everything else like that. Will being healthier, physically healthier, actually help us through this pandemic that we're seeing?
Well, interesting one. I mean, first of all, I'm not a clinician. Okay, I'm an educationalist by trade. So let's just on that one. But a virus is a virus. Okay, so generally speaking, however fit and healthy you are, if that virus gets you, it will get you. Yeah. However, what being fitter and healthier means is that you're in a better place to be able to, more resilient place to be able to deal with the virus if you did pick it up. So the likelihood is it would have less impact or you would recover quicker. Okay. Now that's a generalization, because we do know that there are people that are considered very fit and healthy, and these things get them, and sadly the outcomes are not good. Now, number of reasons for that. We all have different sort of differences in our immune systems, this type of thing. Some of us may be very, very fit and healthy and have an underlying health condition that we don't know about that the virus locks onto. But generally speaking, if we've always known that, and I think everybody secretly on this call know that they could do something to make themselves a little bit fitter, a little bit healthier, and it'd probably be good for them. Now, more than any time, that's true. So if building, where we're going back to before about scheduling your day, you need to schedule in some me time into that day. Building in a daily walk, a daily piece of exercise, absolutely ideal. One, for building your fitness and your resilience, but also when we exercise, that also releases feel-good hormones, endorphins, that actually elevate our mood. If we're out in the daylight, on a beautiful day like today, that will also have an impact on triggering certain endorphins and hormones to elevate our mood. So the more we exercise, the more we tend to find that people's moods enhanced, and the better position that places them to deal with sort of challenges that they have in their life from a more mental perspective.
Richard, we've had a question coming here via email. I'm not going to put a name to it, but I'm sure it's something that we all think of quite a lot. Obviously, we are here as managers, as leaders, as business owners. How can we ourselves get the support that we are giving to our teams? I suppose it's all questions. Who cares for the carers?
That's really interesting, and that crops up all the time, and it's a really, really valid question, because I imagine everybody on this call is spending a good proportion of their time looking after others. And we talked about it earlier in terms of part of the leadership role is that support of others, making sure everybody's all right, that type of thing. And it's a difficult one because there isn't anybody for us. Yeah. So one of the things seen a lot of from other organizations that we've been working with and talking with is actually peer groups getting together to support each other. Okay. So whether that's, for example, the HR team getting together to support each other. Now, what you have to recognize is that there will be a number of people on this call that are small business owners, and there isn't anybody else. As I said before, I've been there before in that role, and they can be quite lonely roles. A lot of leadership roles are lonely. But what we found is people are then starting to reach out to people they know that are in similar jobs, similar roles in other businesses, and actually sort of sharing experiences and, shall we say, buddying up, for want of a better phrase. And that's probably the best way of dealing with it, because we know there's nothing works better than having that opportunity to talk to somebody about things you're concerned with. Nothing makes you feel better than giving someone else a little bit of advice of what's worked for you and it works for them. And so a lot of these calls that we've been doing, people have started using chat, as we speak, Lee, to sort of reach out and say, hey, I'm a business owner in this industry. If anybody, wants to pick up with me and sort of share things, then just contact this number. So for people out there, use this sort of forum to network and connect up with different people. But I think that's the only thing that we as a group can do. Within a workplace setting, obviously we've got our families that will sort of be there for us, but they don't often understand what it's exactly like in our role, and that's where we need somebody that sort of experiences the same challenges we do.
If anyone is in that position and they do want to have a chat, they want to have a virtual cuppa like this on Zoom or something like that, of course you can get in touch with us at the Chamber in all the usual ways, on social, on email, or again you can just pick up the phone, as Richard said, and give us a call. More than happy to do that anytime. But you mentioned family there. It's a big one going on just now, because probably, let's be honest, we're probably spending more time with our families, many of us, than we'll have possibly ever just now. And it's been through it's going to sound really bad here, but it's through no choice of our own. It's kind of been forced upon us, and again that brings its own challenges. At the same time, many of us will have children running about the place. Maybe you'll have both parents working at home, both trying to do their jobs and look after the kids. What can we do to in that situation? We've got any tips for how we can manage our work, manage our mental health and well-being with I don't want to say the kids running around the place, because that sounds really unkind, but you know what I mean.
I know what you mean. I was on a call last week, internal call. There were 5 of us on the call. 3 had a 5-year-old sat on their lap. I felt left out. I went and got Molly, my little Staffordshire Bull Terrier, and put her on my knee. Yeah. But that was really nice. It was really positive. We all said, look, this is okay. We know it's challenging, so let's just do it with the kids. And it wasn't as efficient and effective as a meeting as we normally have, but we actually got the crucial bits done at the same time. So I think it comes down again to this concept of leadership. And we have to recognize as leaders that some people are in very, very challenging home situations. So what can we as leaders do to empathize with that, recognize for those people that they are key pressures. And actually, again, this psychological permission piece again, how can we let people feel comfortable that it's okay to do things differently? It's okay to have your kids sat on your lap. We recognize there'll be certain times of the day it's difficult to get in touch with you, as long as you let us know. So I think we can proactively do a lot in terms of how we talk and support our people in that. We had one interesting client came last week, again, wanted some coaching, but they had a concern about conflict at home with people that were working from home. And could we put on a coaching webinar on that? We titled it a little bit softer, so it was maintaining balance at home, which meant how not to argue with your wife or your husband or the kids, basically. But we had another great example on a call a few weeks ago now. Somebody piped up on chat and we actually brought them on live to tell the story. Young couple with a 5 and 6 year old, both work for different employers, both having to work from home. Imagine the mayhem. Yeah. So they decided, they got together and said, well, actually, if we both worked for 6 days a week and had Sunday off as a family, that would actually allow us to work rota 2 hours on, 2 hours off. So we could look after the kids while the other one's working, and then we swap over. And the 6th day was to catch up the difference, as it were. And so they both went back to their employers. Both employers said, well, what's the other employer saying? But both those employers were enlightened enough to go, you know what, that's a really good idea. Go for it. And it completely resolved the situation. So I know that you can't do that for everyone, and that's a completely different issue if you're a lone parent. But actually just thinking out of the box and looking at doing things differently to deal with the situation are a lot more effective than just trying to battle on with everything that's going on. The key thing both those organisations did, by the way, was they made sure the rest of the team members that those individuals belonged to knew what was going on. So they knew they could manage the expectation of when they should contact people, that type of thing.
And I think the key, one of the key messages coming through that part there, Richard, is something you've said time and time again throughout the course of this call this afternoon. It's communication. It's simple, straightforward thing, keeping everyone in the loop with the steps that you're taking and what's going on, keeping people abreast so they can plan their time and their workspace accordingly.
Yeah. And it comes down, that's the role, the responsibility, the duty of care, for want of a better phrase, of a manager. The challenge we've got today as managers is that we've got our own job to do as well as managing everyone else. But I think it's really important, if you're going to get the performance that you need out of your teams, we have to, each of us individually, accept that we've got to dedicate a good proportion of our time during the week to actually managing people rather than getting work done, if that makes sense.
It does.
It's difficult. That's a difficult balance.
It is a very difficult balance to do, and I think that's something we all need to try a little bit better. Something else that we do need to try and work better at, we touched on it before, was taking breaks and giving ourselves the permission to rest and look, because it's great that as managers and leaders we're looking after everyone else. If we can find that support mechanism for ourselves to help us deal with things, that's great. But sometimes if we are got all this stress, all this pressure on for people, it can take a physical toll on us as leaders. How important is it that we can get some decent sleep, some good sleep? Because that's one thing that many people I know I've been speaking to have been struggling, because they've been worried about the state of their business.
Yeah, sleep is extremely important. And this being Mental Health Week, it's also extremely important for our ability to cope with things. So if everybody on the call can think back to that horrible night when you slept dreadfully and you almost had to crawl out of bed, you were so tired. What happened to your performance that day in terms of your concentration levels, your ability to focus, your interpersonal relationships? You were much quicker to snap at people when things didn't go quite well. So without that good regenerative sleep, we're in a much poorer position to be able to cope with the pressures and challenges in the day. So sleep's extremely important to your mental health. Now, we often talk about sleep in terms of the need for 6, 7, 8 hours sleep a night. What's more important than that is the actual quality of sleep, because that's where we really get the regeneration process that sleep's designed for, and the recovery process. And the best way to create good quality sleep is, there's a number of things. First thing is to make sure that you get your sleeping patterns right. So I mentioned before that we like things predictable and consistent. Well, it's the same with our body and our mind. So we should be going to bed and getting up at roughly the same time each day. By that I mean sort of within 30 minutes. Okay, and that gives that predictability and that regularity. So the body actually is tricked into thinking, well, I'm getting the right amount of sleep, therefore it must be doing me good. I feel better for it. Yeah, sounds weird, but that's how it works. Now, to get that, we've also got to factor in that we can't just jump into bed, switch off the light, and immediately go to sleep. We have to purposely wind down to get our body and mind in the right position to fall to sleep relatively quickly and to get into good quality sleep. So a little bit like if I was going to take everyone out now for a run, yeah, let's all go out for a 10K run. You would expect me to warm you all up gradually first and build up the intensity ready to go. But it's the same for sleep, but in reverse. So think about what you're doing the 30 minutes before you go to bed. What are you doing to gradually wind down, to prepare yourself properly for sleep? It may be part of that time is you're in bed and you're reading a book in a dim light just to slowly bring yourself down and to take away the distractions of the day. Try and avoid, when you're doing that, by the way, social media, because that's just going to spark you again. We're back to that. We've also got the issue of blue light being emitted from some devices. And what that does is disrupt the production of a hormone called melatonin, which is your sleep hormone, which naturally comes on to send you to sleep. So regular sleeping patterns, gradually winding down to sleep, creating a restful sleep environment, really, really important. So your bedroom, optimum conditions for sleep, dark, cool, which is below 18 degrees, yeah, noise-free. They're the simple things, generally speaking. However, there are individual differences, so you need to recognize what's best for you. Some of us can only get to sleep if there's some music in the background. Some of us can only get to sleep with the lights on, you know, those things. So we've got to adapt to our individual differences as well. I mentioned avoid screen time before bed. Mm. The other thing is, you know, a G&T, a glass of wine, a beer. Yeah, we're probably all drinking a lot more than we were before. That's okay. If it's an excessive amount, if like me, you know, a few G&Ts too many, fabulous for knocking me out and getting me to sleep, but it will then disturb my sleep during the night. So what alcohol tends to do is it knocks the sleep patterns. And so when you're coming out of deep sleep into light sleep, and then you're going back down, so you have this sort of movement, you actually don't go into light sleep, you keep going out, up, and you wake up. Now, often those frequent wakenings, you're not even aware of. So you wake up feeling really groggy and wondering why you feel so bad when you've had 8 hours solid sleep. Well, you haven't had solid sleep. You've been waking up, but you just don't know about it. So lifestyle issues and how you actually manage your sleep routine.
Richard, you said there it's important that we wind ourselves down in terms of going to bed. What about the next morning, actually, when we get up? Because I'm one of these people that I'm up early for all sorts of different reasons. You know, the alarm clock goes off at 5 o'clock this morning. I hit the snooze button. 10 minutes later, I hit the snooze button again. And so it repeats until about half an hour later, feel I am now ready to get up. And many people have got these alarm clocks, you know, they've got the birds chirping in the background that slowly gets louder, and apparently it helps you wake in a better mood. Is there anything around truth around that sort of thing?
Yeah, actually, they're really, really good. I have a constant argument with my wife because she can only sleep with the curtains closed. I love the curtains being open. So whenever I'm away from home on business, I always sleep with the curtains open because I then wake up naturally with the daylight I don't need an alarm clock. And that's the way we were originally designed. So when we were all cavemen, yeah, we were actually controlled by the light. So when it got dark, we went to sleep, and when it got light, we woke up. So we had very short sleeps in the summer, but we almost went into semi-hibernation in the winter. And that's naturally how we work. So the best way of waking up is naturally as the light starts to come, because it's the light that then triggers adrenaline and other hormones to wake you up. Okay. And it's the dark that triggers melatonin, which is another hormone which sends you to sleep. So the more naturally you can work to that rhythm, the more you will wake up in a rested sense. However, we all know, because of the modern world, we need to wake up at set times like you do. Mm-hmm. And that's when the alarm comes in, and we sort of adapt. I do the same with you. I'll set the alarm earlier than I need to get up so that I can hit snooze and I can gradually bring myself awake, as opposed to then sort of leaping out of bed and then tripping over and falling over. But yeah, there's a huge amount of truth in that. So we've got these devices now that work on light or noise that mimic sunrise. And the evidence suggests that they're really, really effective for an awful lot of people.
I'll need to check those more out for myself, because that could have come very, very handy. Richard, thank you for taking the time to this. There's been so much we've got through. We've covered mental health. We've looked at support schemes, ways we can adapt to our physical environment, and working from home, and engaging in our conversations with the family to try and get something else sorted out there. But it would be great just finally to hear what we can all do to become just a little bit healthier. We touched on it briefly, about, taking that extra, going out for a walk, doing something else. What else can we do?
Right. Okay. This is a bit of my hobby horse, I must say, but it's about energy. We also call it physical resilience. And our energy levels are really, really important to how we feel about ourselves. So we know those people with higher levels of energy tend to be more productive, because energy dictates not only what we can do, but how well we do it. And certainly with it being Mental Health Awareness Week, we know that the more energy I have and the better I feel about myself because of it, that's really, really supportive to my mental well-being. And energy is really, really simple to develop. And it's going to be boringly simple. There's three things. You just need to eat a bit healthier to have the right fuel inside you. You need to be, so that's a healthy, balanced diet, nothing out of the ordinary. Mm-hmm. Really simple. The next thing is you need to be as fit as you can be. So in terms of exercise, because the fitter that machine that you inhabit, which is what we call a body, the more efficiently it uses the energy stores that you provide it. Yeah. And the third thing is just get some decent quality sleep, because that's where we restore and recuperate. And the analogy with a car, for example, if I use fuel before for a diet, is it's topping up the battery. Okay, so just three simple things to do. So if you were, I'd ask everybody three rhetorical questions, okay, in terms of what you've done in terms of your diet, exercise, sleep. What have you consciously done this morning before going to work to prepare the right energy levels to face the challenges you're going to face today? Okay. What have you consciously planned to do during the day to maintain those energy levels and to maintain your performance? Now, that might be taking breaks, might be mini nutrition snacks, that type of thing. Might be a walk at lunchtime to refresh and recuperate. And the third question then is, what are you consciously thinking about doing this evening in order to recover as well as you can so that you can go again tomorrow? And just if you do one thing each day to answer each of those three questions, within about 7 days, you'll be surprised how much more vavavoom, as they said in their car, you've got.
I'll tell you something. I could use some more va-va-voom the way my week has been going. So I will. It's funny because you were going
Just
through
do
it.
it. Just do it for the next week. That's my challenge to you.
Well, I've been making notes as we've been going along, and it's like you say it's a rhetorical question, but I'll find it does help if you write the answers down to yourself, because it just reaffirms that you are taking those steps, you are moving things in the right direction, which is absolutely fantastic.
And the other thing I think you need to do, Lee, from what you've said, is then the fourth factor is how you pace yourself during the day. So how do you pace the use of those energy levels? So, again, comes down to driving a car. If you drive your car with the foot to the floor, the fuel burns up very quickly. So how do you pace yourself during the day? And this is where the brakes come in as well. Okay. So that you pace that energy usage so that you can peak at the right times during the day, and in between you're recovering to go again.
That's going to be a challenge for me. I'm going to have to actually,
Discipline.
discipline and making that schedule and sticking to it. That's going to be the key thing, certainly for me. But Richard, thank you so much. So many little nuggets, so many little tidbits that we've been able to take away this afternoon. And if anyone wants to go back and watch this webinar again, they're going to be able to do that. It's going to be on our YouTube channel, www.youtube.com/DGChamber. It'll be up there from around about 4 o'clock this afternoon. But of course, Richard, the westfieldhealth.com website is a mine of information for people that are looking for little extra bits, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think Louise has posted on the chat the exact address to go to. So there's lots of free support resources there. I mean, I talked earlier about practical support we can provide as employers, whether that's how to manage furlough, home working, returning to work effectively when it comes to time. So there's lots of guides there. There's also lots of free wellbeing support services that you can use to give to your people, little toolkits on sleep, for example, coping with change, those types of things. So get onto the website, just to help yourself to the resources that you think will work for you.
Richard, thank you so much. Thank you for taking the time. Richard Holmes, Director of Wellbeing from Westfield Health. All information, as I say, westfieldhealth.com, all the details in the chat box, and we'll share them all on our website, that at dgchamber.co.uk. If you